Hey everyone, welcome back. Yareli is out and let's see what she's about. If you haven't bought her from the market, you will have to get her BP from the Event Kids questline first. Her neuroptics, systems, and chassis can be picked up from the Bash lab in your dojo after you've created it. Because her parts require researching, this means it'll take a minimum of 3 days from today to get her this way. For those of you who haven't read up on her, I'll go over her abilities quickly first. Yareli is a magical girl themed frame. Her abilities revolve mostly around crowd control and mobility, but there are quite a few issues with that you'll soon see. She's accompanied by Merulina, a spiritual companion that was the inspiration for K-Drives, but the first thing you'll notice is that we can't mod it, which means its properties will only scale with your Warframe ability stats. So let's take a closer look. Her 1, Snares, is a spammable ability that casts 3 bubbles forward and prioritizes seeking out enemies. If it binds an enemy, it will encapsulate them in a suspended position. They will take increasing impact damage over time in addition to the initial direct hit. As this is impact damage, this means it's useless against armor scaling. Additionally, the low damage increase per second will quickly reveal its fallout problems beyond normal mode of the star chart. If you cast with no enemies around, the bubbles will persist for some time. The bubble seeking range is affected by range, and both scaling and initial damage are affected by strength. You can have up to 15 bubbles present at once. Her 2 is Merulina. This summons her for you to ride on, granting you 75% damage reduction. It seems they've made K-Drive movement snappier with this update in general. However, there are big issues with this ability. You can't go into operator, you can only use your pistol, you get stuck on doors constantly, you have a massive hitbox that prevents you from fitting through gaps, and it's all around just annoying to use. I believe it's only really suitable for open worlds. Hop off with melee button, recasting ability, or depleting all of her HP. You are free to cast abilities on Merulina, but notably this only extends to Yareli's innate abilities. Subsumed ones will not be castable on Merulina. The other saving grace is having innate prime sure-footed while on her, but I doubt this is worth the movement penalty in tighter tile sets. You jump super high and can double jump now, but you can't accurately bullet jump anymore. You also can't flip backwards. Honestly, you can't even flip at all. It just feels really gimmicky and should have been her passive instead of taking up one of her ability slots. Merulina's health scales with strength. Her 3 are Aqua Blades, the first ability that might actually be useful. These blades produced a fixed radius triple shuriken around you that hit enemies 3 times per tick. It isn't like a beam weapon with infinitely stacking hits, so damage is somewhat limited despite being of the armor ignoring slash variety. Fixed radius makes it a little bit small, but also means you don't need any range for them. They have 100% slash proc chance, but the lower damage means killing will require lingering around for many procs. Think of it as DPS support rather than an actual damaging ability. At least it has endless scaling though. Now her 4, Riptide, feels like a crappy larva or ensnare. It pulls enemies in, then nukes them outward after a second. There's no way to increase the duration of them being held in place, meaning it is only good as a CC tool to ragdoll enemies on steel path because it does blast damage, so it sucks against armor. It can kill decently in normal mode and seems to have forced crits, but its damage is quite meh. More damages in the vortex will increase the explosion of the burst, but armor significantly outscales its potential. You can see the damage is pretty trivial against these heavy gunners. Overall, a very expensive ability to use for CC that also yeets them back out and has limited DPS capability. There are better ways to deal with enemies on normal mode, and if you're only using it to bring in enemies, 100 energy isn't really worth it, and they only get ragdolled for an instant. If you fully armor strip, this might have potential on a max range high strength build, but beyond that, it just really isn't functional. Now, unlike usual, I'm actually going to go over the issues I mentioned with her 2 and demonstrate to you why Merulina is not worth being an ability before we get into her builds. This is all very obvious stuff and honestly causes a lot of a negative impression on me. You know Merulina is an Exalted, right? This is basically the first Exalted we can't mod. Yes, it's just the K-Drive, but it takes up an ability slot. Why do we have an ability slot for an Exalted that is basically almost entirely utility and we can't even mod it? Also, if you actually use Merulina in normal tile sets, here you see, I'm not even going into the hellhole that is theirs. Look at this. This is a Darrow. You can't go an operator when you're on her. I'm mashing the 5 button and it's giving me that ability can't be cast sound. There's no reason why you can't just leave your frame behind like Necromex and poop out your operator. This is already a big con if you're using Merulina because no Magus lockdown, no Magus elevate, no seamless gameplay to get around quickly, no stealth revives on your teammates. Well, you can use Merulina and get around quickly, but this leads us into the next point I mentioned. Look, riding her gets you stuck on every single door. You can make it through most of them, but it will slow you down to a crawl every single time. Remember, we have 75% damage reduction only. You can't zoom through tile sets at all, and on Steel Path, 75% damage reduction isn't enough. When you're moving fast, you can't be hit, but hey, if you get stuck on every single door, she's just gonna get shredded. Yes, they made the movement snappier, but what's the point if you hit a stop sign every couple of seconds? Also, you see this hole in the tile? You can normally jump through this, but you can't fit through it now. Your hitbox is massive, which means you're also actually going to get hit by a lot of things when you're staying still. There are probably a ton more gaps in other tile sets like this that will block you also. You see this crate, you can get stuck on it. You won't path over it, and now I'm stuck in the corner. Also, you can't use your primaries, so we get prime sure-footed and max 75% damage reduction for a severely gimped operator movement equivalent, loss of almost all weapon functionality, and inability to use any subsumed ability. This needs to be repolished ASAP, else no one is going to use Merulina. Also, make her damage reduction scale with strength to cap out at 90%. 75 is a joke. Like, this is honestly an insult of an ability, and the reason why I'm so unhappy about it is because it takes up an actual ability slot. We already went over how her 1 has very limited applications, and this means she basically has half a kit, only her 3 and 4. I know some other frames that have usability issues on certain abilities, but this is 2021. After making frames like Protea, Zaku, Lavos, which admittedly is a little bit of a mess, and Savagoth, that was all in a row by the way, how do you make a frame where half her kit is dysfunctional? That's what I would expect for a pre-2018 frame. Alright, so let me show you what I've done with her today. So I've tried to make her work with 3 separate builds, but you'll notice very quickly that these are all very gimmicky, because honestly she only has half a kit. I tried to make something work with her base kit, but it just doesn't work. She needs helmets. She has no damage and weak CC. Her only good CC also yeets enemy afterwards. Her 2 doesn't help her beyond just being incastable prime sure-footed, as open worlds have Archwing available. Her 4 wants range, her 3 doesn't want range, and her 1 is super weak. So let's get started on the first build. The first one focuses on our Aqua Blades, and is the only one with legitimate endless scaling. However, it still isn't strong enough. These aren't super powerful, and you can't nuke properly on their own. Rather, they function to complement the rest of your loadout. Her 3 doesn't care about range, so I'm gonna dump on that and go all into duration and strength. We'll be taking advantage of priming enemies with Viral to get the most out of its slash tick, so I'm bringing Prime Sure-Footed for Epitaph. If you're staying on Merulina, you can skip this, but honestly, who uses that in a small tile? We are infusing Roar because there are no other ways to increase the damage of this ability. Roar also acts as a faction buff, meaning it will double dip by both increasing the initial slash hit of Aqua Blades and then multiplying the resulting slash DOT again. This is how we will actually be able to kill enemies with it on Steel Path. One interesting thing to note is that her Aqua Blades don't seem to snapshot Roar, so you will always need to have it active when blades are active. That means you can't compensate with just not casting Roar if you manage to cast her blades before it expired. That said, our duration is high enough, this isn't really that much of an issue. It is a sticking point though. As I said before, her Aqua Blades don't scale with range, but they do stack slash extremely quickly, so you do have to get in their face. To get the most out of this ability, I've chosen to run the full mecha set. This means I do have to bring a KUVA, but that is okay because I'm already using Epitaph as my viral primer with primed fulmination. The enemies will naturally path to me, and because I don't instantly kill things, I'm bound to eventually kill the marked target by my KUVA, which will spread all the viral and slash ticks from Aqua Blades across the rest of the room. If you're looking for more survivability, then consider dropping Energy Conversion or Augur Secrets for Rolling Guard. Casting her 4 once with 2 Augur mods present, which I also have on our primer, will be enough to instantly refill your shields with Decay Dragon Key. I'm going to showcase this with Merulina also because I don't have enough polarities to slot in Prime Sure-Footed at the moment, but know that you can do it that way too. The Epitaph build I'm bringing is just a basic Viral Primer. The only thing that has changed is now I'm running Galvanized Diffusion for more multi-shot, as the kills from our Aqua Blades will count to these stacks for the mod. Alternatively, you can opt for the Rad Viral Primer. You'll be spraying this weapon liberally to CC the enemies anyway, since she doesn't really have any other source of it, to reduce the chance of Merulina dying quickly. This is the KUVA I brought today, which just happens to be a Vizier Predazite, but honestly it's up to you. It's only really here for the mecha set, but survivability helps from the linked mods, and you have more utility like the synth set and fetch. So let's test this out. I am spawning the Corrupted Heavy Gunners, and let's head up. So normally when you have a setup of Roar, Viral, and Slash, you would expect stuff to die instantly, right? Well, here goes nothing. Remember, we have 322 strength and 50 more from energy conversion. I cast my Roar, I cast my Blades, and where's the marked enemy? Let's shoot the floor as we damage them for Viral. They should die any second, and there. Okay, so Mecha Set should have passed all those slash ticks and Viral onto everything else, and you see? They don't even die in one tick. It works, and this is probably the closest you'll get to having a quote-unquote nuke on her for Steel Path. It's extremely copium, and I'm not exactly impressed. But hey, this is the build I want to show you first because honestly, it's the only one that can really do damage with her abilities on Steel Path consistently and the highest KPS one. It's honestly pretty sad. My thoughts are they need to increase the base damage of her Aqua Blades or 500 or even 750, 3 times more than it is now. It is really depressing it takes this long to kill the first enemy, or just enemies in general, in a max viral slash setup, even with double dipping Roar. And I'm even resorting to the mecha set. Okay, let's move on to the next build. So if we take a look at her one again, we'll see this ability does more damage per second on each tick. Like I said, this technically means we have infinite scaling so long as we can keep the ability active. So what happens if we run max duration and max strength? Well, I've got a build just like that for you today. This is 279 duration and 362 strength with growing power. In exchange, we basically are losing all of our survivability. At least the Aqua builds managed to build on that and preserve it. So what might we be able to achieve with this? Well, if I hover over her one, you'll see we cranked the crap out of her damage stats, we lost a lot of range, but you're not going to launch this across room to start with. Because armor is a problem and viral priming is important, you're most likely going to get up and close personal to crowds before you spam your one to set up, so that's why I have pillage on. Oh yeah, you're gonna have to spam your one because it only casts 3 bubbles at a time, and can only get up to 15 enemies trapped. It also lasts 33 seconds, meaning we can get pretty insane damage going, but the question is how long do you have to wait until the damage actually gets good? Like I've said, an infused pillage over a 4 because we dumped range to max duration and strength. We need to strip all that armor off, and we don't need 4, meaning her original 4 is basically useless. Again, we see that the lack of synergy in our kit problem. Technically this build works with a 3, but we don't need that high duration to do it, and armor stripping is useless for it, so once again, we're wasting slots. You can only really build for one of her abilities at a time. So now let's spawn those corrupted heavy gunners. I'm gonna try and full strip them just to show you how well this could potentially work. It takes a couple of casts, but it isn't really necessary. 2 to 3 casts is more than enough because it already cuts their armor down below 1%. Alright, I'm gonna make sure growing power is procced, and now I spam my one on them. Let's see those damage ticks. And what am I looking for? It gains 1000 damage or so per second. This is hardly impressive. It can kill them eventually, but by the time that kills them, you're gonna be 2 to 3 tile sets away. At 1000 damage per second at the end of the duration, you're probably going to be ticking over 30,000 damage per second. That might sound good, but with Roar and Viral, it took 30 seconds to get there, and Slash can do that instantly on the first tick in most setups. Even her 3 was ticking for 4,500 Slash ticks 3 times per second, and it was ramping up constantly. And because this damage is an actual status, it doesn't work with a mecha set. Genius implementation, am I right? So we basically have established her 1 is crap and can barely kill things, her 3 can actually kill things, but not that quickly compared to other frames and gimps her entire set, and that leaves her 4, so let's take a look at a build for that. When I first tested this build, it seemed like her 4 has force crits, but it still isn't anything amazing. It scales on numbers of enemies hit, meaning range is important for the build, but we also need strength to make it hit hard. We don't need duration because how long the vortex lasts or anything isn't affected by that. So this means her 1 and 3 are useless on this build. I guess you can stay on Merulina if all you want to do is go around casting her 4, but it's blast damage, so you absolutely need the armor strip, which you can't cast while you're on her. This means we're infusing pillage again, but on her 1 instead. I literally just went full range and strength build with token efficiency, as all we're doing is spamming her 4. You don't really need prime sure-footed. Merulina is still an option, but it's kind of... You know what I mean. I just want to showcase this build, so I'm going to skip on it due to polarity problems. Remember, this is a 278 strength build. We have 30 meter radius for the big suck, but armor stripping isn't anywhere as good as the previous build. So let's test this one out, shall we? At the very least, the blast proc knocks everything down. I guess this is where you try and maybe set up that fancy Parazon finisher I previously talked about with Mark for Death. Oh wait, we don't have Mark for Death on our kit because we need to put pillage on for armor strip to make her kit work. Amazing. So it seems her 4 can't kill things properly no matter what. It takes so much strength and rage to make it do its thing, but I think it's just better suited to support your weapons rather than kill outright. On normal star chart, both her 3 and 4 should relatively be fine with their respective helmets, but on Steel Path, you're just killing too slowly for anything to be truly effective. Do I think she's a frame worth getting? Well, MR points are a thing, so yes, pick her up. Should you craft her instantly or grab her from the market? For the first time in a very long time, I'm gonna say no. I don't think she's worth your plat. Do not spend plat on buying her. I repeat, do not spend plat on buying her. She is not worth it. Also, did I mention you can't use any guns except your pistols while you're on Merulina? Merulina is not an ability. It should be built into her passive. Oh wait, she has a passive, right? Okay, let's take a look at that. She gains an extra 100% critical chance for pistol so long as you're moving for at least 1.5 seconds. Wow, that's a free buff. Lucky us, we're always moving on in Warframe, right? But you know what's funny? This is more of an ability than Merulina is. There are other frames with dual passive, so there's no reason why she couldn't include this. Maybe make her Aqua Blades synergize with Merulina or something, multiplying the damage if you use it while you're on her. Also, set it to 750 base, and 2 times if you're on it, so now you have 1500. Now imagine if this thing hit 6 times harder than it did now. It would actually be usable and you wouldn't have to gut the rest of her kit. None of the abilities are strong enough and you give up the rest of her kit to build for any of them. Again, do not spend your plat on this. I did it so you wouldn't have to. And remember, if Merulina was a passive, we'd have another ability slot even. Now last thing, what does she give her helmet? It is her Aqua Blades. This is actually pretty funny. I bet you this 4-slash ability is going to be better on other frames than herself. At least Sevagoth was actually a decent frame before we passed off Bloom. I would have at least hoped her 4 could hold them in place for some time so you could just walk up and hit them with your 3, but she instantly yeets them. There is no synergy in her kit whatsoever. I bet you within a few days someone would find a way to use her Aqua Blades on a different frame much better than she ever could. So that's about it. I'm usually more positive about new frame releases, but Yareli just shows they've completely dropped the ball. Her kit lacks synergy, she has a non-ability and ability slot, building for an ability actively detracts from the rest of her kit, she has massive mobility issues and option restrictions if you choose to hop on her iconic Waverider. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Tell me what you think down in the comments because I feel she needs a ton of buffs to be functional. And now we reach the end. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I'm currently covering the Sisters of Parvos update. Stick around if you want to see more interesting memes and builds on a daily basis. I'm also preparing to get you the info first out now that the mainline has dropped. You don't want to miss out on my Corpus Lich content and the weapon reviews, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.